today I'm going to be walking through how to make this tie strap romper, which has poppers so that you can undo it for easier toilet access. It also has pockets, as always. I used my jumpsuit bundle for this project, which is on my Etsy shop down below. Tried to make everything as beginner friendly as always as well. So I think that's everything. Let's get on with the tutorial. So for this project, you'll need a 4-way stretch fabric. I'm using this one, which is a custom printed fabric from Cotton Bee. It's 95% cotton, 5% elastane. So anything with a similar composition to that will work well. I'm also going to be using pins, some fabric scissors to cut out my pattern pieces, fabric pens to draw out my pattern pieces. And this is optional, but I'm going to be using some 5 to 6mm wide flat braided elastic. This is just going to give a little bit of extra structure to the top. In terms of my sewing machines, I'm going to be using an overlocker. If you don't have an overlocker, you can use a normal machine with zigzag stitch, and I am also going to be using just a regular machine for some top stitch as well. And one thing I forgot, you will also want some interfacing like this for your hems. In terms of the pattern, I'm going to be using my jumpsuit bundle for this one. So I'm going to be using the pocket piece. For the top, I'm going to be using my tie strap top. So I have the top piece, which is going to be for the front and the back, and the piece for the straps. And then I'm going to be using the shorts version for this one. So I'm going to go in and get everything cut out, and then I'll show you how many pieces you need for each pattern piece. So I've just finished cutting out all of my pieces. In terms of the top, I'm going to need 4 in total, 2 for the front and 2 for the back, and it's all the same pieces. But for each side, you're going to need one of these to be the lining. So I've cut mine out in just some scrap white fabric that I had, but you can just do it in your normal fabric. So you just need 2 for the front, which one of them is going to be the lining, and then 2 for the back, and again one of them is going to be the lining. In terms of the straps, you're going to need 8 in total of these. So there will be 2 at the front, 2 at the back, but again you are going to need linings for each of these pieces. So for my linings, I have used the same fabric because the straps do tend to move around a bit depending on how you tie them, so you probably want them to be the same on each side. So you're going to want 8 of these in total. 4 will be for the lining, so up to you if you want to use the same fabric or not, but I have decided to for this particular piece. For my pocket pieces, I have 4 in total of these, but you can see I have 2 facing in each orientation. So I have 2 facing with this straight edge on the right, and then 2 facing with that straight edge on the left. That is very important, unless you're using a fabric that doesn't have a right or wrong side, in which case you can just cut them out for in any orientation. And then for my shorts pieces is pretty much exactly the same as the pockets. So you need 4 in total, and then as you can see here, I've got 2 facing in each orientation. So I'm going to start by working on my straps. So I'm going to take 2 of my pieces and lay them right sides facing together and just pin along these edges. So now that I've got both of those layers pinned together, I'm just going to sew down both of these long edges and then along one of the shorter edges. The other one I'm going to leave open, so I'm just going to sew straight down and around here. With my overlocker, you can also use a zigzag stitch for this. This is how that looks once I have those ends sewn in place, so just straight around here, leaving this edge open. Now I'm going to turn this to the right side out. So now I'm just going to sew down both of those long edges with a zigzag stitch, just straight on top of here and along this edge, as close to the edge as I can get. That's just going to help the strap to sit a bit flatter. So just straight down this edge and straight down this edge. So I've just finished getting that top stitch in place. I'm just going to repeat that for my other pieces as well. So I'll have 4 of these in total. I just need 2 of them for now. And I'm going to take my pattern piece, and there's a mark on each end. And just at the end that I've left open, I'm going to mark that in place, just so that I know where the middle of each of these straps is. So just marked the center of the end that I left open. This is going to help me to know where to attach these to the top. So I'm just going to grab that piece now as well. So I have my 2 top pieces here, and I also have my pattern piece which has 2 marks in the same way that show you where the straps will attach to the top. So I'm just going to mark those onto both of my pieces here. So I've just marked that in place on both pieces. I'm going to take this gingham one and lay it right side facing up. And then take my straps and match up the mark that I've got on the strap to the mark that I've got on the top. I'm just going to pin that in place. Do the same for the other strap, just matching up the mark on the strap to the mark on the top. And now I'm going to take my cream piece and I'm going to lay that with right sides facing together straight on top of those pieces. I'm going to pin that in place across this top edge. So once you get to the strap, you can just take this out and place it back in when you're going through all 3 layers. And do that all the way along. So now that I've got that pinned in place, I'm just going to sew straight across that top edge with my overlocker. You can also use a zigzag stitch. So now that I've got that top edge sewn in place, I'm just going to take my flat braided elastic. This is completely optional. I'm just going to sew that straight on top of that seam that I just sewed. That's just going to add a little bit of extra structure. So I'm just going to take that seam and I'm going to do this on top of the gingham side, just because whichever side you do it on is more likely to peek through to the other side. So we don't want it to be the lining. So I'm just going to take that elastic, place that right on top of the seam that I just sewed. I'm just going to use this finger to guide the elastic along that edge without pulling the fabric or the elastic. I'm just going to trim that off and sew all the way off the end. And that should look something like this once it's all sewn in place. So that should look something like this once you've sewn across your top edge and added the elastic. And then if you turn it to the right side out, it should start to be looking more like the actual top. And then I've also gone in and repeated that for all of my remaining pieces so that I've got 2 identical tops now. So I'm going to turn this one back to the wrong side out. And then I'm going to place this one that is the right side out inside the one that's the wrong side out. So first I want to make sure that I've got the right fabric facing each other. So here I've got the gingham facing up and here I've got the gingham at the top. So I'm just going to place this inside here. Now I just want to start to pin them together. So I'm just going to do this along each of the side edges. So now that I've pinned those side seams in place and I've pinned that through 4 layers of fabric, that's very important, I'm just going to sew down each of those sides with my overlocker. You can also use a zigzag stitch. Just make sure you're getting those 4 layers of fabric in the stitch. So I've just finished sewing down those edges and now I can turn this to the right side out. So that's the top pretty much done. And now I can move on to making the shorts. So I'm going to start by taking 2 of my shorts pieces that face in opposite directions and just lay them one on top of the other with right sides facing together. Now I'm just going to pin around this curved edge here. So now that I've got that edge pinned in place, I'm also going to add my pockets. So I'm going to find the straight edges at the side and match that up to the straight edge of my pocket with right sides facing together. And just pin that down the edge. And then I'm just going to do the same for the pocket on the other side. So now I'm going to sew both of these pockets in place and along this curve as well. I'm going to use my overlocker. You can also use a zigzag stitch. So that's how that looks once everything is sewn together. And I've just gone in and repeated all of those steps with my remaining pieces of my shorts. And I'm going to lay that right sides facing together with this piece. And I'm just going to match up those corresponding edges. And I'm going to pin right around those side seams, so along the top of the pocket, round the pocket, and then down the side. I'm going to do that on both sides. So I've just finished pinning the sides in place. I'm just going to sew along the top of the pocket, around the pocket, and then down the side on both sides. Again, I'm going to use my overlocker. You can use a zigzag stitch. So this is how that will look once you've sewn down the edges. Now I'm going to add my top. So I'm just going to take this top that is the right way out and place it inside the shorts that are inside out. I'm just going to start to match up the bottom of this top around the top of the shorts. I'm going to start by pinning these side seams in place, and then the same on the other side, and then I'm just going to pin the rest of the way around this opening. It's up to you what you want to do with this pocket. You can pin it in with the opening if you want, or you can just leave them loose. I like to leave them loose because it adds to the fullness of the skirt, but it's completely up to you. You can sew it into the rest of these layers if you want to. So I'm just going to finish pinning around this opening. So then once that edge is pinned in place, I'm going to go and sew that with my overlocker. You can use a zigzag stitch as well. So that's how that will look once that edge is all sewn in place. I'm just going to turn this to the right side out. Now there's just a couple of things left to do. First is to hem all the way around this bottom edge. So to do that, I'm just going to take my interfacing, just going to fold it in half so it's not quite as wide, and place it at this bottom edge, fold this edge up over the interfacing and then press that in place, and then I'm going to sew the whole hem in place with a zigzag stitch. Zoom in a little bit to show you again. So I'm just going to fold this in half, or I might cut it in half, lay that at that bottom edge, fold the edge up over the interfacing, and then press with my iron on top of here. So I'll show you how that looks after I've pressed it all in place, because it takes a really long time, and then I'll come back and show you with the zigzag stitch on top as well. For the gusset kind of area here, you're just going to want to fold in the edges, and then after that you can fold up this bottom edge here, so they're kind of folded over the top of each other. I will show you how that looks in a second. So this is how that looks once it's pressed in place with the interface in. Now I'm just going to follow this round with a zigzag stitch to secure it in place. So I've just finished sewing that bottom hem in place, and the final thing I'm going to do is just take some of these snap fasteners and sew them on top of this edge here. I'm going to sew 2 of them on this end, and then the corresponding 2 on this end. I'm just going to do that with a hand stitch. So I've just finished adding my snap fasteners to both of my pieces, and then my playsuit is done, and those 2 pieces can just snap together.